You know, when it comes to litigation, a lot of people think it's all about having the best facts. But that's only half the story. The truth is, winning often comes down to mastering the rules of the game itself. It's about procedure. So today, we're going to open up the litigator's playbook and break down 3 absolutely critical rules that can literally make or break your case.
So let's just frame it like this. What if winning a lawsuit isn't just about who has the better story, but who's simply better at playing the game? I'm talking about a game with very clear rules, specific moves you can make, and, yeah, some pretty serious consequences. Getting a handle on this playbook? That's your first step to actually playing the game to win, instead of just reacting to whatever your opponent throws at you.
All right, first up, rule number 1 is all about editing your story. We're talking about the power and the peril of amending your pleadings. See, there's this critical window where you can change your core arguments, but you gotta know when that window slams shut. It's a powerful tool for sure, but get the timing wrong, and it can be a fatal mistake for your case.
Okay, so before we can really get into amendments, we need to be clear on what a pleading is. Just think of it as the foundational document for your entire case. It's the official story you file with the court, the one that lays out all your claims or your defenses. Everything, and I mean everything that comes after, is built right on top of this foundation.
Now, when it comes to amending that story, timing is, well, it's everything. It's a total game changer. Look at this timeline here. Before the trial even starts, courts are usually pretty liberal about it. They want to get to the real heart of the controversy. But the second that trial begins, the rules get way, way stricter. And after all the evidence is closed, you're going to need an exceptional, almost unheard of justification. That clock is always ticking.
And that leads us to the single most important test for any kind of late-stage amendment: due diligence. It's simple, really. Once that trial is kicked off, the judge is basically going to ask you one thing. Could you have brought this up earlier if you'd done your homework? If the answer to that is yes, well, your amendment's pretty much dead on arrival. You just can't hold cards up your sleeve and wait to play them when you think you're losing.
So what's a judge actually thinking about? This is basically their checklist, and it comes straight out of the landmark Revigitu Builders case. The court is constantly trying to balance your need to make a change against how fair that is to the other side. They're asking stuff like, is this necessary? Is it just a sneaky way to introduce a totally inconsistent argument? Are you trying to completely change the entire nature of the case? And most importantly, is this in good faith? A failed attempt here doesn't just get denied, it can seriously damage your credibility with the court. So, if there's one thing to remember about our first rule, it's this: amend to clarify, not to completely change your story. It's a tool for sharpening your arguments, maybe correcting a mistake. It is absolutely not a get-out-of-jail-free card to start a brand new case just because your first one isn't going so well.
Okay, so you've locked in your story. But what about the prize? How do you make sure that the thing you're fighting for is actually still there at the end of it all? That brings us to Rule 2, secure the prize. I mean, think about it. If you're in a lawsuit over a piece of property, what's to stop the other side from just selling it while the case is going on? Your victory would be totally hollow. This rule is all about protecting that asset.
And to do that, you've basically got 2 main shields. On the one hand, you've got this thing called lis pendens. It's a fancy term, but all it means is that it puts the entire world on notice. Hey, this property is part of a lawsuit. So anyone who tries to buy it during the case, they're stuck with whatever the final court order is. It's really about protecting the justice system itself. Then, on the other hand, you have part performance. This is more for protecting a buyer who's already acted on an agreement, maybe paid a deposit and moved in, even without a registered deed. It's a shield to stop the seller from unfairly kicking them out.
But, and this is a really important strategic point, part performance is a shield, not a sword. What does that mean? It means a buyer can use it to defend their possession if the seller tries to evict them, but they can't use it as a weapon to go on the attack and sue the seller to force the sale. It's a purely defensive play.
So if you're a buyer, this is your playbook. These are the steps you absolutely have to take. Before you even think about signing anything, you have to do your homework. We're talking a thorough title search, checking online court records, and always insist on registering the sale agreement. Seriously, taking these steps up front can be the difference between a great investment and walking straight into a legal minefield.
And that brings us to our final, and maybe the most serious rule in the playbook. Rule 3, respect the referee. We're not really talking about strategy anymore. This is about the fundamental authority of the court itself. Because if you disobey an order or disrespect the institution, well, the consequences can end the game for you right then and there.
Contempt isn't just one simple thing. It's actually split into 2 very different types, civil and criminal. Think of civil contempt as being all about enforcement. The court told you to do something, you willfully ignored it, and now they're going to make you comply. Criminal contempt, though, that's a whole different ballgame. That's about protecting the dignity of the justice system itself. We're talking about acts that scandalize the court or interfere with justice, things that shake the public's faith in the whole system.
But look, this process isn't arbitrary. There are rules. It has to follow what we call the principles of natural justice. So a motion gets filed or the court acts on its own, you're served with a notice, you get a chance to file a reply and explain yourself, then there's a hearing. The court has a ton of power, for sure, but it still has to give you a fair shot to tell your side of the story.
And the consequences? They are very, very real. We're looking at a maximum of 6 months of simple imprisonment or a fine up to 2,000 rupees. Yeah, a court can accept a sincere apology, but it's the threat of this penalty that gives court orders their teeth. It's the ultimate enforcement tool. So what can you do if you're facing a contempt charge? Well, you do have some defenses. You can argue that your disobedience wasn't willful. Maybe it was an accident. Or you could argue that it was literally impossible for you to comply with the order. A genuine, heartfelt apology delivered quickly can also go a long way. And for criminal contempt, you might try to argue that your statement was just fair criticism, but let me tell you, that is an incredibly fine line to walk.
All right, let's bring it all together for the final verdict. As we've seen, this stuff isn't just about strategy. It's more than just rules. These are the strategic pillars that literally shape how a legal case unfolds, who gets the advantage, and at the end of the day, who wins.
I really want to leave you with this one thought. It's so easy to dismiss all this procedure stuff as just boring red tape, right? But it's not. It's so much more than that. Procedure is the very architecture of justice. It's what ensures fairness, what gives the system predictability, and it makes sure that everyone is playing by the same set of rules.
So look, knowing when to edit your story, how to secure the prize, and why you have to respect the referee, that's the essential first step. But the real question I want to leave you with is this. Are you prepared to go beyond just knowing the rules and start thinking strategically about how to use them? Because that, right there, is what separates a participant from a true master of the game.